Hello, everyone. My name is Avery Hayes. At 32 years old, I am a commander in the United States Navy, and my story is about how a moment of absolute, soul-crushing personal betrayal became the foundation for my greatest professional test. I never imagined that the man who shattered my life would one day be forced to salute me, or that the sweetest revenge wouldn't be revenge at all, but something far more powerful: command. It's a strange thing when your past walks back into your life wearing the same uniform as you, expecting you to command it. What would you do if the person who broke your heart was suddenly placed under your complete authority, their entire future resting in the palm of your hand? It's a question I never thought I'd have to answer. Before I dive into the story of how I faced that impossible choice, I'd love to know where you're all watching from today. So please drop a comment down below. And if you've ever had to face someone who hurt you in a professional setting, hit that like button, because you'll know the kind of strength this took. And for anyone new here, make sure you subscribe to join our community of storytellers who understand that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. The air on the pier at Naval Station San Diego was thick with salt and jet fuel, a familiar perfume that had always meant homecoming. But after 9 months deployed in the Persian Gulf, it smelled different. It smelled of endings. Families crowded the dock, holding colorful signs and red, white, and blue balloons that strained against the sea breeze. Children bounced on their toes, their small faces tilted up in anticipation. I scanned the vibrant chaos, my eyes searching for two faces I knew better than my own: my fiancé, Alex, and my younger sister, Chloe. They were supposed to be there. Alex, with his easy, confident smile that had always been my anchor. Chloe, with her bright, bubbly energy, probably holding a ridiculously oversized sign she'd made herself. But the crowd was a blur of strangers. My shipmates were being swallowed up by tearful, joyous embraces, and I stood alone, a solitary island in a sea of reunion, my duffel bag a lead weight at my side. A cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. They weren't here. I tried to rationalize it. Traffic, a mix-up on the return time, a dead phone battery. I pulled out my own satellite phone, the one we used for brief, rationed calls at sea, and saw no new messages. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I took a cab back to the small apartment Alex and I had shared, the one we'd picked out together before I left. The one where we'd talked about paint colors and where to put the crib one day. The silence in the cab was deafening, broken only by the driver's cheerful chatter about his own daughter's upcoming wedding. I could only nod, the words caught in my throat like barbed wire. When I slid my key into the lock, it felt foreign. The door swung open into an apartment that was too quiet, too still. It felt empty, not just of people, but of life. A thin layer of dust coated the coffee table. The vibrant green plant we'd bought together was a dry brown husk in its pot. My stomach dropped, and then I saw it. Propped up against a lone, empty vase on the kitchen counter was a single white envelope. My name was written on the front in Chloe's familiar, loopy handwriting, not Alex's sharp, decisive script. Chloe's. The dread that had been a knot in my stomach exploded into ice water terror, spreading through my veins. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The paper felt cold, clinical. I tore it open, my fingers clumsy. The letter was short, just a few paragraphs that methodically dismantled my entire world. It started with an apology, a weak, hollow-sounding one. Then came the words that would be burned into my memory forever. "Alex and I have fallen in love," Chloe wrote. "It just happened. We fought it, but we couldn't help it. We didn't want to tell you like this, over a letter, but we didn't know how else to do it. He's moved out and is staying with me for now. We're so sorry, Avery." The letter fluttered from my fingers and drifted to the floor. I sank down onto the cold linoleum, my back against the kitchen cabinets, and I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a demolition. Alex, the man I was going to marry, the one who held my heart in his hands, and Chloe, my baby sister, my maid of honor, the only other person on earth who knew every secret, every scar. The two halves of my world had collided and left me in the wreckage. The first few days were a blur of numb disbelief. I was on post-deployment leave, a period meant for reconnecting and decompressing. But I felt more deployed than ever, adrift in a hostile alien landscape. The silence of the apartment was a physical presence pressing in on me. I replayed every memory, every conversation, searching for a sign I had missed. Alex and I had been perfect, or so I had thought. We met at a Navy ball 3 years prior. He was a lieutenant, just like me, an ambitious surface warfare officer with a smile that could disarm admirals. We connected instantly over a shared love for the sea and a dark sense of humor forged by the unique pressures of military life. He understood the long hours, the sudden deployments, the alphabet soup of acronyms that governed our lives. With him, I didn't have to explain myself. He just got it. Our courtship was a whirlwind romance fitted into the gaps of our demanding schedules. We stole weekends, treasured late-night phone calls, and planned our future in emails sent across oceans. He proposed on a cliff overlooking the Pacific at sunset, the same spot where we'd had our first real date. He'd gotten down on one knee, his voice, usually so steady, thick with emotion. He talked about building a life together, a home, a family. He'd slipped a simple, elegant sapphire ring on my finger, a stone the color of the deep ocean. "So you'll always have a piece of the sea with you, even when you're home with me," he'd said. I had cried, my heart so full I thought it might burst. I believed in that future with every fiber of my being. And Chloe. Chloe had been my shadow, my confidant, my biggest cheerleader. She was 5 years younger, a free-spirited artist who stood in stark contrast to my structured military life. I was discipline and order. She was chaos and color. When I brought Alex home for the first time, she'd pulled me aside, her eyes wide. "He's the one, Avi. I can feel it." She helped him pick out the ring. She was going to be my maid of honor. The three of us had become a unit. Alex would tease her about her messy painting studio, and she would fire back with jokes about his perfectly starched uniforms. I had looked at them, laughing together at a family barbecue just before I deployed, and felt a profound sense of peace. My world was complete. It was a beautiful, intricate house of cards, and I never saw the hands that were about to swipe it all away. After 3 days of radio silence from them, my grief finally hardened into a cold, sharp blade of anger. I had to hear their voices. I had to make this real. I dialed Chloe's number first. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice small and fragile. "Avery, I knew you'd call." Her tone wasn't one of remorse. It was one of someone who had been caught and was bracing for the consequences. "Why, Chloe?" It was all I could manage to say. The sound was raw, torn from my throat. "Why?" I heard her take a shaky breath. "I don't know. I can't explain it. It wasn't supposed to happen. He was just there. After you left, he was lonely, and I was just trying to be a good friend to him, for you. We started having dinner, and then it just became something else. For you." The words were a slap in the face. She was trying to frame her betrayal as an act of service. The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. "A good friend?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "A good friend doesn't sleep with her sister's fiancé, Chloe. A good friend doesn't blow up her sister's life while she's serving her country halfway around the world." The line went quiet. Then I heard a sniffle. The classic Chloe defense. When confronted, cry. It had always worked on our parents, on me. "You're being so mean, Avery," she whispered. "I'm hurting too." The conversation devolved from there. She painted herself as the victim of a grand, uncontrollable passion, a Jane Austen heroine swept away by fate. Then, the final insult. I heard a rustling, and a new voice came on the line. "Alex, Avery, let's be mature about this." His voice was calm, measured, like he was negotiating a contract. It was the voice he used in professional meetings, not the one he used to whisper that he loved me. "There's no need to attack, Chloe. This situation is difficult for everyone." I felt a surge of white-hot rage. "Difficult? You're calling this difficult? You cheated on me with my sister, Alex. You let me spend 9 months in a war zone believing I had a home to come back to. Don't you dare talk to me about maturity." He sighed, a sound of patronizing weariness. "I understand you're upset, but these things happen. Emotions are complicated. We made a connection we didn't expect. The best thing for all of us is to accept it and move forward." He spoke of our life together as if it were a failed business venture to be liquidated. There was no remorse, no real apology, just a cold, pragmatic severing of ties. I hung up the phone, shaking with a fury so profound it left no room for tears. My last hope was my parents. I called them, my voice still trembling. I expected shock, anger on my behalf, a promise to read Chloe the riot act. What I got was far worse. My mother's first words were a sigh. "Oh, Avery, I was hoping this wouldn't get messy." Messy. That was her primary concern. "Mom, did you know?" I asked, a new sickening dread dawning. There was a pause. "We had an idea something was going on," my father admitted, his voice gruff and uncomfortable. "Chloe has been very emotional lately. She needs our support." They knew. They had known and said nothing. "And what about me?" I cried, the last of my composure shattering. "What about your other daughter, the one whose fiancé just left her for her sister?" My mother's voice turned cool, defensive. "Avery, you've always been the strong one. You're resilient. You have your career. Chloe is more fragile. This has been very hard on her. And frankly, you were gone for so long. It's not an excuse, but it's a reality. We can't change what's happened, and we won't have the family torn apart by this. We expect you to handle this with dignity." They had already chosen a side. They were protecting the golden child, the fragile one, and I, the strong one, was expected to absorb the blow and keep quiet for the sake of a family that had already been torn apart. That phone call was a second, deeper betrayal. It wasn't just Alex and Chloe who had left me. It felt like my entire family had. That was my rock bottom. Alone in an empty apartment, abandoned by my partner, my sister, and my parents. The Navy, however, doesn't stop for heartbreak. My leave ended, and I had to report back to duty. That's when I made a choice. If my personal life was a smoking crater, I would build a fortress in my professional one. I poured every ounce of my pain, my anger, and my shattered heart into my work. I became the first to arrive and the last to leave. I volunteered for every undesirable assignment, every complex project that no one else wanted. While my peers were going out, dating, and living their lives, I was in my office, poring over naval warfare publications and tactical manuals. I lived on black coffee and sheer determination. My pain became fuel. Every time a memory of Alex's laugh or Chloe's smile threatened to surface, I would push it down and memorize another weapons system specification, another operational doctrine. I was building a wall around my heart, and every brick was a professional achievement. My commanding officer at the time, a sharp, no-nonsense captain named Eva Rostova, noticed the change. At first, she was concerned. She called me into her office one day. "Hayes," she said, her eyes scanning my face. "You look like you haven't slept in a week. Is everything okay?" I gave her the standard military reply. "Everything's fine, Captain. Just focused on the mission." She didn't press, but she watched me. Over the next few months, she saw the results of my relentless focus. My division's readiness scores soared. I streamlined processes, improved training, and my sailors were top performers in every inspection. I wasn't just coping, I was excelling. Before she transferred, she wrote my fitness report, the all-important evaluation that determines an officer's career trajectory. It was glowing. She recommended me for an early promotion to commander and for a department head role, a position of significant leadership. "You have a fire in your belly, Hayes," she told me during my debrief. "Some people let hardship break them. You're letting it forge you. Don't ever lose that." Her words were the first validation I'd had in a year. It wasn't from family, it was from a superior who saw my worth based purely on my merit. It was a lifeline. The promotion board results came in 6 months later. I was on the list, promoted to commander. A few weeks after that, I received my new orders. I was being transferred across the country to Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval base in the world. I was to be the new operations department head on a major amphibious assault ship. It was a huge step up, a command of my own with over 100 sailors and officers under my charge. A new coast, a new job, a new rank, a completely fresh start. As I packed up the last of my belongings from the San Diego apartment, taping up boxes filled with a life I no longer recognized, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I was leaving the ghosts behind. I was Commander Hayes now, strong, resilient, the person everyone expected me to be. I had no idea the biggest ghost of all was waiting for me on the other side of the country. The drive from California to Virginia was a long, solitary pilgrimage. With every mile I put between me and the West Coast, I felt the weight on my shoulders lighten just a little. This was my chance to redefine myself, not as the woman who was left, but as the woman who led. Naval Station Norfolk was an overwhelming city of gray steel and restless energy. Ships lined the piers as far as the eye could see, a forest of masts and radar arrays against the flat Virginia sky. My ship was a behemoth, a Wasp-class LHD, essentially a small aircraft carrier. It was intimidating and exhilarating all at once. My first day, I walked up the gangway in my crispest summer whites, my new commander's insignia, a silver oak leaf gleaming on my collar. The salt air whipped at my hair, and for the first time in a year, I smiled a genuine smile. This was where I belonged. My first official duty was to meet my new senior enlisted leader, the command's Master Chief Petty Officer. Master Chief David Chen was a legend in the fleet, a man with more sea time than I had time on this earth. He was waiting for me at the top of the brow, his uniform immaculate, his posture ramrod straight. He was shorter than I expected, with a kind face weathered by years of sun and sea, but his eyes were sharp and missed nothing. He gave me a crisp salute. "Welcome aboard, Commander, Master Chief Chen. The operations department is ready for your arrival." His voice was a low, steady rumble. "It's good to be here, Master Chief," I replied, returning the salute. "I'm looking forward to working with you." He gave a slight nod, a flicker of appraisal in his eyes. He was sizing me up, as was his duty. I was the new boss, an unknown quantity. My leadership would be tested, and his support, or lack thereof, could make or break my tour. We spent the next hour walking through the department spaces. He introduced me to the division chiefs, all seasoned senior NCOs who looked at me with the same professional curiosity as Chen. The spaces were a labyrinth of passageways and bulkheads, humming with the quiet, constant thrum of the ship's machinery. The air smelled of ozone, coffee, and industrial cleaner. It was the smell of purpose. We walked through the main office, a large open-plan space filled with desks, computers, and busy sailors. This was the nerve center of the operations department. My personal office was at the far end, the only private space in the area. "Your junior officers have already prepared your office for you, ma'am," Master Chief Chen said, gesturing toward the closed door. "The turnover binders and divisional rosters are on your desk." "Thank you, Master Chief," I said, my hand hovering over the doorknob. This was it, the culmination of a year of pain and relentless work. My name was on a small brass plaque on the door, CDRAHAYES. I felt a surge of pride so fierce it almost made me dizzy. I had earned this. I had survived. I took a deep breath, turned the handle, and pushed the door open. The office was Spartan, but clean. A large wooden desk dominated the space, a government-issue computer monitor glowing on its surface. A bank of secure communications equipment stood against one wall, and standing at attention, his back to me as he tacked a large maritime chart to a corkboard on the wall, was a junior officer in his summer whites. He was meticulously arranging the chart, his shoulders squared. He must have been the duty officer, assigned to make sure everything was perfect for my arrival. "Good morning," I said, my voice full of the easy authority I had been cultivating for a year. The officer stiffened, his work pausing. He took a half-second, as if bracing himself, before he turned around. And the world stopped. Time seemed to slow down, to stretch and warp like heated plastic. The air was sucked out of the room. The humming of the ship faded into a dull roar in my ears. It was Alex, Lieutenant Alex Vance. He was thinner than I remembered, with new lines of stress around his eyes, but it was unmistakably him. The same dark hair, the same strong jaw, the same man who had haunted my every waking moment for the past year. He was standing in my office, in my command. His face was ashen, a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. All the color had drained from it, leaving his skin a pasty, sickly white. His mouth was slightly open, as if to say something, but no sound came out. For a long, silent moment, we just stared at each other, two ghosts who had unexpectedly materialized in the same room. My mind was a maelstrom of confusion, rage, and a terror so profound it threatened to buckle my knees. "This can't be happening. It's a mistake. It's a nightmare." But the silver lieutenant bars on his collar were real. The silver commander's oak leaf on mine was real. His training, his instinct finally kicked in. His back snapped ramrod straight. His arms went stiff at his sides. His eyes, which had been wide with shock, locked onto a point on the wall somewhere over my shoulder, and then he spoke, the single word forced out of him, raspy and strangled. "Ma'am." That one word, that one syllable of deference shattered the spell. It was a thunderclap in the silent room, a stark, brutal acknowledgement of the new reality. He wasn't Alex, my ex-fiancé. He was a lieutenant in the United States Navy, and I was his commanding officer. My own training took over, a shield of professionalism slamming down over the screaming chaos in my head. I walked past him to my desk, my movements stiff, robotic. I placed my briefcase on the polished surface with a soft thud. I could feel his eyes on me, following my every move. I turned to face him, my expression a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. "Breathe, Hayes. Just breathe. You are Commander Hayes. You are in charge, Dot." "Lieutenant," I said, my voice shockingly calm, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "What is your name and role in this division?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Lieutenant Alex Vance, ma'am. I'm the Assistant Operations Officer." Assistant Operations Officer, my number 2, my direct subordinate. Of all the ships in the Navy, of all the commands in the world, he had been assigned to mine. The cosmic cruelty of it was breathtaking. I nodded slowly, as if processing new information, as if his name meant nothing to me. "I see. I'll need the divisional roster, the watch bill, and the turnover binders for my review. Have them on my desk in 5 minutes." He stared at me for a beat too long, a desperate, pleading look in his eyes. He was searching for a flicker of the Avery he knew. He found nothing but a cold, impenetrable wall. "Yes, ma'am," he finally whispered. He executed a flawless about-face and walked out of my office, his steps wooden and unsteady. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone in the sudden, crushing silence. The moment the door closed, my carefully constructed dam of composure crumbled. I stumbled back against my desk, my legs giving out. A wave of nausea washed over me. I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles white just to stay upright. My heart was pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. The room was closing in, the bulkhead seeming to press inward. A full-blown panic attack was roaring up my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to use the tactical breathing techniques they drill into you. 4 seconds in. Hold for 4. 4 seconds out. Hold for 4. I repeated it over and over, a desperate mantra against the rising tide of hysteria. All the pain, all the grief, all the rage I had buried for a year came surging back with the force of a tsunami. It was a cruel, cosmic joke. The one place I thought I was safe, the one sanctuary I had built for myself, had been violated by the very person I had been running from. A sharp knock on the door jolted me back to reality. "Ma'am?" It was Alex. He had the binders. I stood up, smoothed down my uniform, and plastered the neutral mask back on my face. "Enter." He came in, his eyes fixed on the floor. He placed the stack of binders on the corner of my desk without looking at me. "Is there anything else, ma'am?" he asked, his voice low and monotone. I looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time. He looked diminished. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by a haunted, hollowed-out look. He was a stranger in a familiar body. "That will be all, Lieutenant," I said, my voice cold and dismissive. "You may go." He flinched almost imperceptibly at the finality in my tone. He turned and left without another word. The second he was gone, I walked to the small, private head attached to my office and splashed cold water on my face, again and again, until the roaring in my ears subsided. I looked at my reflection in the small steel mirror. My eyes were wide, haunted, but my jaw was set. I had a choice to make. I could break. I could request a transfer for him or for myself, admit that this was untenable, or I could do my job. I could be the commander they promoted me to be. Later that day, Master Chief Chen appeared at my door. He knocked softly. "Ma'am, got a moment?" "Of course, Master Chief. Come in," I said, gesturing to the chair in front of my desk. He entered but remained standing. His gaze was steady, observant. "Just wanted to check in, see how the first day is shaping up. Everything to your satisfaction?" It was a standard question, but the way he asked it felt pointed. He had been in the main office when Alex had walked out, pale as a ghost. He had seen it. "Everything is in order, Master Chief," I said, keeping my tone even. "Just a lot of material to get through." He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. "The Navy's a small world, ma'am," he said quietly. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact and an unspoken offer. I see what's happening, and I'm on your side if you need me to be. He was testing my leadership, my ability to handle a crisis. Admitting weakness on day one was not an option. It certainly is, Master Chief, I replied, meeting his gaze directly. But professionalism is paramount. I expect nothing less from myself or from my officers. A flicker of respect appeared in his eyes. He nodded again, this time with a sense of finality. Understood, ma'am. The coffee in this office is terrible, by the way. I'll have one of the chiefs bring you a pot from the mess. The good stuff. He was signaling an alliance. He was on my team. Thank you, Master Chief. I'd appreciate that. As he left, I felt a small bit of solid ground beneath my feet. I wasn't entirely alone in this, but the path ahead was a minefield, and I had to navigate it one excruciatingly careful step at a time. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in tension and emotional suppression. I created a rigid, unbreachable wall of professionalism around myself. In that wall, there was no Avery, the heartbroken woman. There was only Commander Hayes, the department head. And in my world, Lieutenant Vance was just another junior officer. Not the man who shared my bed, not my sister's lover, just a name on a roster, a face in a morning meeting. I was meticulously, painfully fair. I assigned him tasks with the same impersonal tone I used with every other officer. I reviewed his work, marking it up with a red pen, my comments focused solely on content and format. I called on him in briefings, my eyes cool and distant. Lieutenant Vance, what's the status on the amphibious readiness charts? I would ask, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet of the conference room. And he would stand, his posture stiff, and deliver his report. The charts are updated and ready for inspection, ma'am. He never met my eyes. He looked at my forehead, at my chin, anywhere but directly into my gaze. The entire department could feel the strange, cold energy between us. It was a silent, humming thing in the background of their daily lives. The sailors whispered in the mess decks. The other officers exchanged knowing glances when Alex would flinch every time I said his name. The rumor mill worked overtime. They must have known each other before. Maybe they'd been rivals at the academy. Maybe they'd dated. The speculation was rampant, but no one dared ask. My demeanor forbade it. I was a closed book, a steel door. Master Chief Chen was my silent co-conspirator in this charade. He managed the enlisted personnel with his usual quiet efficiency, but he always seemed to be there, an observant presence in the background. He'd bring me a mug of coffee in the morning, our only exchange a simple ma'am, and thank you, Master Chief, but it was an anchor in my swirling storm of anxiety. He never mentioned Alex, but his unwavering support was a silent acknowledgement that he knew this was hard, and he respected how I was handling it. Living this double life was exhausting. I would be iron-willed and composed all day, and then I would go home to my sterile, empty apartment and collapse. The mask would fall away, and the grief and rage would wash over me. Some nights, I would just sit in the dark, staring at the wall, too tired to even cry. I had to consciously stop myself from thinking about him and Chloe. Were they still together? Did she know he was here? The questions were poison, and I had to force them out of my mind. The only way to survive was to compartmentalize. Work was work. Home was just an empty space to wait for work to begin again. The one thing I couldn't control was Alex's performance, and it was suffering. His reports were submitted on time, but they were perfunctory, lacking the insight and initiative expected of a junior officer on a command track. He was present physically, but his mind was elsewhere. He was a ghost haunting the passageways of the ship, his eyes vacant, his movements sluggish. He was making minor errors, small things that a sharper officer would have caught, and I, as his commanding officer, could not let it continue. It was a threat to the readiness of my department. The time was coming for his 6-month performance counseling, a mandatory, formal, one-on-one review. It was an unavoidable collision course. The thought of it filled me with a cold, sickening dread. There would be no one else in the room, no buffers, no distractions, just me, him, and a year of unspoken history between us. The day of his counseling session arrived gray and overcast, the sky matching my mood. I spent the morning reviewing his file, my notes, and the Navy's standard counseling form. I mapped out what I needed to say, focusing strictly on performance metrics. Punctuality, satisfactory. Uniform standards, excellent. Technical knowledge, adequate. Leadership potential, needs improvement. The words were cold, clinical, a firewall against the emotion churning inside me. At 1400, there was a soft knock on my door. Enter. Alex stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The small office suddenly felt claustrophobic, the air thick with unspoken words. He stood at attention in front of my desk. Lieutenant Vance reporting for performance counseling as ordered, ma'am. His voice was a low monotone. At ease, Lieutenant. Have a seat, I said, gesturing to the chair. He sat on the edge of the seat, his back rigid, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I began, my voice a calm, practiced monotone. I went through the checklist, discussing his duties, his completion of required training, the small successes he'd had. He said nothing, just nodded at the appropriate times, his eyes fixed on the insignia on my collar. Then I got to the hard part. However, Lieutenant, I said, pausing to let the word hang in the air, I have concerns. Your reports, while timely, have lacked depth. Your analysis has been superficial. In your role as AOPS, I expect proactive leadership, not just reactive management of your sailors. Your division's performance has been adequate, but it has not been excellent. And in this department, adequate is not the standard. I pushed a copy of his counseling sheet across the desk toward him. Your performance to date is trending toward a mediocre fitness report, and you and I both know that a P for promotable on a fit rep from this command is a career killer. It signals to every promotion board that you are not ready for more responsibility. Is that the signal you want to send, Lieutenant? He stared at the paper, but I don't think he was reading it. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. I thought he would just take the criticism, sign the form, and leave. But then he looked up, and for the first time in months, he met my eyes. The professional mask he had been wearing was gone. His own eyes were full of a desperate, raw anguish. Avery, he breathed, the name a violation of every rule, every boundary I had erected. My entire body went rigid. Commander, he corrected himself, his voice cracking. Ma'am, we can't do this. I leaned back in my chair, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my expression remained like stone. I don't know what you mean, Lieutenant. We are conducting your performance review. It's a standard part of my duties as your department head. No, he said, shaking his head, a broken, desperate sound in his voice. This whole thing, you, me, pretending we're strangers. I can't. It's killing me. He finally broke. The dam of his own composure, which I hadn't even realized he was maintaining, burst. I was a coward, Avery, I know that. What I did, there's no excuse. I was an idiot. I was lost. I thought I wanted something different. His voice dropped to a pained whisper. Chloe and I, it didn't last. It was a train wreck. We broke up 6 months ago. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. The confession hung in the air between us. 6 months. They had already broken up before he was even transferred here. The news hit me, but not in the way I would have expected. There was no satisfaction, no schadenfreude, just a vast, empty weariness. He leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of my desk, his voice pleading. I still love you, Avery. I think I never stopped. Seeing you every day, so strong, so amazing. It's torture. Please just talk to me. Not as my CO, as Avery. This was the moment, the ultimate test. The old Avery, the one who had loved this man, would have crumbled. She would have cried or screamed or maybe even listened. But that Avery was gone. She had died in a dusty, empty apartment a year ago. Commander Hayes sat in her place. I let the silence sit for a long moment, letting his words, his pleas, evaporate in the sterile, air-conditioned office. I looked at him, not with anger, but with a cold, clear-eyed finality. Lieutenant Vance, I said, my voice quiet but laced with steel. Your personal regrets are not my concern. Your romantic history is not my concern. Your performance, however, is my concern, and your performance has been unacceptable. He flinched back as if I had physically struck him. You come into this office and you talk about your feelings, I continued, my voice never rising but gaining intensity with every word. You tell me it's torture. Let me tell you about torture, Lieutenant. Torture is spending 9 months in a combat zone, counting the seconds until you can come home to the life you've built, only to find it reduced to an apology note on the kitchen counter. Torture is having your heart broken by the 2 people on this earth you trusted most. His face crumpled. The last of his hope died in his eyes. So, no, I said, leaning forward, my eyes locking onto his. We will not talk about this. What we will talk about is your future in the United States Navy, which, at this moment, is hanging by a thread. You have 2 choices. You can continue to wallow in your personal drama, deliver a substandard performance, and I will write you the career-ending fitness report that you have, to this point, earned. I will document your failures with meticulous, impartial detail. Or you can pull yourself together. You can start acting like the officer the Navy trained you to be. You can put your head in the game, lead your sailors, and do your job to the absolute best of your ability. I stood up, the full authority of my rank settling over me like a cloak. I don't care about Alex Vance, the man who broke my heart. I need Lieutenant Vance, my assistant operations officer. Can you give me that officer? Or do I need to begin the administrative process to have you transferred from this command for the good of the unit and the morale of the department? The threat was real. I could do it. And in that moment, he knew it. He stared at me, his mouth agape. He saw the new person I had become, the steel in my spine, the ice in my veins. He saw a commander, not his ex-fiancée. The fight went out of him completely. He slumped back in his chair, utterly defeated. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me, his eyes now holding a new, startling clarity. The respect was born of fear, but it was respect nonetheless. Yes, ma'am, he said, his voice barely a whisper, but it was firm, resolute. You'll get that officer, ma'am. I nodded once. Good. Then this counseling session is over. I expect to see immediate and sustained improvement. Do not make me regret giving you this chance. Do you understand me, Lieutenant? Crystal clear, ma'am, he said. He stood up, squared his shoulders, and for the first time, he looked like the officer I had once admired. You are dismissed, I said. He turned, and without another word, he walked out of my office, the door clicking shut behind him, sealing the final chapter of our past. The change in Lieutenant Vance was not just immediate, it was dramatic. It was as if our confrontation had been a defibrillator shock to his career. The very next day, he was the first officer in the office, a full hour before morning quarters. He had a fresh haircut, his uniform was sharper, and there was a new light of focus in his eyes. The haunted, distracted man was gone, replaced by a sharp, motivated officer. His reports became detailed and insightful. He started taking initiative, mentoring his junior sailors, and anticipating problems before they arose. He spoke with confidence in briefings, his answers crisp and well-researched. He was, in short, becoming the officer I always knew he could be. The tension in the department didn't disappear, but it transformed. The awkward personal drama tension was replaced by a new, high-performance, professional tension. We were a team, and I was pushing them hard. Alex, in a strange way, set the new standard. He was working to prove himself to me, and in doing so, he was raising the bar for everyone else. Our interactions remained brutally professional. Lieutenant Vance, report. Yes, ma'am. But now, when he said ma'am, it wasn't with fear or resentment. It was with a hard-earned, grudging respect. And I, in turn, treated him with the cool, impartial respect a commander owes to a subordinate who is performing their duties well. About a month after our counseling session, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Avery, it's Chloe. Her voice was hesitant, fragile. It had been over a year since I'd heard it. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a distant clinical detachment. Hello, Chloe? I said, my tone flat. How did you get this number? From Mom. Avery, Alex called me, he told me. That you're his new CO. I had no idea. I am so sorry. This must be horrible for you. Her apology felt different this time. The defensiveness was gone, replaced by what sounded like genuine remorse. It is what it is, I said non-committally. Avery, I need you to know, she rushed on, her words tumbling out. Alex and I, we were a mistake. A huge, stupid, terrible mistake. We broke up months and months ago. I was selfish, and I was immature, and I destroyed the most important relationship in my life for nothing. Mom and Dad still try to defend me, but I know what I did. I live with it every day. I needed you to hear it from me. I'm sorry. I listened to her confession, and I felt a quiet sense of closure. Her pain was her own to deal with, just as mine had been my own. We were no longer intertwined. I appreciate the call, Chloe, I said simply, but I have to go. I'm at work. I didn't offer forgiveness. I didn't offer absolution. I offered a boundary, a clean, final cut. I hung up the phone and went back to reviewing the ship's operational schedule. The real test of our new dynamic came 2 months later, during a major fleet exercise in the Atlantic. We were simulating an amphibious landing, a complex, high-stakes operation involving thousands of personnel. In the middle of the night, in rough seas, a critical piece of navigational radar failed. It was Alex's direct area of responsibility. Alarms blared through the command center. The ship's captain, a stern, imposing man named Thorne, was on the command bridge, his voice crackling over the intercom, demanding answers. The atmosphere was electric with stress. I saw a flash of the old panic in Alex's eyes. He looked at me, and for a split second, I think he expected me to take over, to save him. I just looked back at him, my expression calm. Lieutenant Vance, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. This is your system. What's your plan? That was all he needed. A switch flipped. He took a deep breath and became a leader. Master Chief, he barked, turning to Chen. Get my tech team to the radar room now. I want diagnostics running in 5 minutes. He turned to another officer. Get me the schematics and the backup comms protocols. For the next 48 hours, Alex was a whirlwind of focused energy. He didn't sleep. He lived on coffee and adrenaline, leading his team of young sailors, troubleshooting the complex system under immense pressure. I stayed in the background, observing, monitoring his progress, ready to step in if he faltered. But he didn't. He isolated the fault, devised a clever workaround using a secondary system, and got the primary radar back online just in time for the critical phase of the landing exercise. He had done it. In the after-action debriefing, the entire ship's leadership was assembled in the wardroom. Captain Thorne was at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. He went around the room, getting reports from each department head. When it was my turn, I stood up. "Captain," I began, "the operations department performed well, but the successful recovery of the SPN-43 radar was due to the exemplary leadership and technical acumen of one officer in particular." I paused, and I saw Alex standing against the back wall stiffen. He probably expected me to take the credit, or at least share it. Lieutenant Vance worked tirelessly for 2 days under extreme pressure to resolve a crisis that could have jeopardized this entire exercise. He demonstrated initiative, resilience, and a profound commitment to the mission. He is a credit to this command. I sat down. The room was silent. Captain Thorne looked at me, then his gaze shifted to the back of the room, finding Alex. A rare, almost imperceptible nod of approval was his only response, but it was enough. Later, as we were leaving the wardroom, Alex fell into step beside me for a moment. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and in his eyes was a look I hadn't seen before. It wasn't love or regret or fear. It was pure, unadulterated professional gratitude. It was the look of one naval officer acknowledging another. In that moment, I knew we had both finally healed. He wasn't the man who broke my heart anymore. He was just a good officer who had earned my respect. Another year passed. The rhythm of ship life took over, a steady cadence of deployments, exercises, and long days at sea. Alex continued to excel. He earned the trust of his sailors and the respect of his peers. He was a different man from the one who had walked into my office that first day, more mature, more humbled, more capable. I wrote his final fitness report, and it was a masterpiece of earned praise. I recommended him for his own department head tour, noting his exceptional performance during the radar crisis. I was honest, I was fair, I was his commander. He had earned it. The day came for him to transfer to his next command. He came to my office for the last time, his transfer orders in hand for me to sign. The awkwardness that had defined our first year was gone, replaced by a comfortable, professional quiet. He stood before my desk as he had done so many times before. "Ma'am," he said, placing the papers in front of me, "here are my checkout sheets." I took the papers and signed them with a firm, steady hand. I handed them back to him. "Congratulations on your next assignment, Lieutenant. You've earned it. They're getting a fine officer." He took the papers, but didn't leave right away. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at me directly. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "For everything, not just for the fit rep. You taught me what it means to be a leader. You taught me about accountability." I nodded slowly. "The Navy teaches us all hard lessons, Alex." It was the first time I had used his first name in 2 years. It felt strange, like a word from a foreign language. "Good luck to you." "You too, Commander," he replied. He extended his hand. I looked at it for a second, then took it. His grip was firm, respectful. It was the handshake of a colleague, not a former lover. A final, definitive period at the end of a long, painful chapter. And then he was gone. I stood up and walked to the porthole in my office, watching as the tugboats guided a destroyer out of the harbor. A deep sense of peace settled over me, a quiet I hadn't felt in years. The ghost, was finally gone, not just from my ship, but from my heart. Master Chief Chen knocked and entered, a mug of coffee in his hand. He set it on my desk. He'd seen Alex leave. "He turned out to be a damn good officer, ma'am," he said, looking out the porthole with me. "Yes, he did, Master Chief," I said. He took a sip of his own coffee. "Good leadership has a way of doing that." It was the highest compliment he could have given me, a quiet acknowledgement of the entire 2-year ordeal he had silently witnessed. I smiled, a real, unburdened smile. "Thank you, Master Chief." He just nodded and left me to my thoughts. Looking back now, I see the profound and painful irony of it all. The worst thing that ever happened to me was also the thing that made me who I am. The betrayal forced me to find a strength within myself I never knew I possessed. It forged me into a leader, a commander. The ultimate revenge wasn't seeing Alex fail. It wasn't ruining his career, which I so easily could have done. The ultimate victory was demanding his absolute best, forcing him to become a better man, a better officer, all while I was becoming the best version of myself. I didn't need to tear him down to build myself up. I just needed to hold him to the same high standard I held myself to. And in the end, we both found a strange, unexpected, and completely professional redemption. My worth was never tied to his love or his betrayal. It was forged in the fire of my own resilience and defined by the command I learned to take over my own life. My journey taught me that we can't control what happens to us or who hurts us, but we have absolute control over how we respond. Facing the past, as terrifying as it can be, is the only way to truly be free of it. I'd love to hear your own stories in the comments below. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to be the bigger person, and it ended up empowering you in an unexpected way? Your stories give all of us strength, so please don't hesitate to share. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, your value is not determined by who leaves you, but by the person you have the courage to become in their absence. Thank you all so much for listening.